Hari Om, Namaste. Welcome to all. And I thought that people in the West will be a bit busier today, but nice to see that you don't miss Vedanta session and, things that are coming up as well. I'm taking more verses from Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ today, and it's going to elaborate much more on the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ. So it'll be very interesting to see. If people can turn their cameras on, I'll be very happy because it's very difficult to speak to black screens all the time. So please do, if you're able, please turn your cameras on there. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dayakaram Dayakaram Dantam Dharma Pravartakam Pranamami Dayanandam Madacharya-varam param. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. The two invocation verses. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Bhidiyate Sarva Vedānta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satgurum Pranatosmyaham. So we were the subtle body. So we have come to understand that as a human being, Jiva, individual, I am not just the physical body. The Shastra reveals, unfolds that we are a conglomerate, we are three bodies, in fact, in one. And these three bodies, the Shastra unveils, talks about are the Stula Shariram, the physical body, Sukshma, which is the subtle, and the Karana Shariram, which we'll see also, which is the causal body, the cause for these other two. So we saw the different various components of the subtle body very briefly. And in Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, Adi Shankaracharya actually elaborates pañcañānendriyāṇi, pañcakarmendriyāṇi, pañcaprāṇādayaḥ, manaścaikaṁ, buddhiścaikā, evaṁ saptadaśākalābhiḥ saha yattiṣṭhati, tatsūkṣmaśarīram. So what is the model that we saw in the Tattvabodha? All five sense organs, jnanendriyāṇi, and we understood also these are not the physical organs that we see on our physical body. These sense organs are sense powers. So the powers behind the organs are in the sūkṣmaśarīram. And these are the instruments to receive knowledge of the external world. Then we have the 5 organs of action called karmendriyanis. And we saw that also the power of locomotion, the power of movement, all of this resides in the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, the subtle body. So these are the powers that respond to the data that is brought in by the sense organs. And within this sukshma, the model of the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, there are also physiological functions, the 5 pranas. These are, digestion, circulation, all of this sūkṣmaśarīraṁ keeps that all functioning. Then one mind, manaha aspect. Mind, we know, there are no, different compartments in the brain. These are faculties of thinking. Various thought forms are divided in our Shastra to give us, an idea of what the type of thought is. So they're just categorizing thoughts. So we have manaha aspect of thinking, which contains all the karma, the desires, the fluctuations, sankalpa, vikalpatmaka, we say. And this manaha aspect is what is always changing all the time. Then the Tattvabodha goes on to talk about the intellect, which is buddhi. The buddhi is that determinate factor, the determinate thought, the decisive thought, the thought that accepts the manaha fluctuations and says, this is the key. So this is, the buddhi aspect is very, very important component also of the sūkṣmaśarīra. Now we have the same kind of idea that comes in Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, but the beauty of Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ is that Adi Shankaracharya elaborates much more on the faculty of thought, because that is where we are, stuck at actually. So in verse 96, he begins talking about the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ. He says, Vāgādi pancha shravanādi pancha prāṇādi pañcābrahmukhāni pancha buddhyādya vidyāpi ca kāma karmāni puryastakam sūkṣmaśarīraṁ. So here's same, very similar description of the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ. He says 5 organs of action, such as speech, etc., 5 organs of knowledge, beginning with the ear, etc., the group of 5 pranas, the 5 elements starting with space. So here he includes elements as well, the 5 elements starting with space, along with buddhi. So here the space he's talking about is an 8 cities, 8 cities that make up the subtle body. So let me just explain this, what his model is. The 5 organs of action, he says, is 1 city of this physical, of the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ. The second city, he calls it Puri. Puri is city. The second city he talks about are the 5 organs of knowledge, beginning with the ear. So this is another city he talks about. The third city is the 5 pranas, so physiological function. The fourth city of this sūkṣmaśarīraṁ of the individual are the 5 elements starting from space. So here he has added an extra factor to the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ. The 5 subtle elements starting with space is the 4th city in this in the subtle body of this human being. The 5th city is the buddhi and the faculty of thinking, the manaha, chitta, and ahankara. So here in Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, he will add 2 extra types of thought forms to the faculty of thought. In Tattvabodha, we only saw buddhi and manaha. In Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, Adi Shankaracharya adds here chittam, which is chitta is the memory, and he adds also ahankara. So this 5th city in this sūkṣmaśarīraṁ is the intellect and the manaha and the chitta and the ahankara. The 6th city is ignorance. So the sūkṣmaśarīra has also got ignorance. The 7th city is desire, kama. And the 8th city is action. So this is, you see the last three cities they're talking about: ignorance, desire, action. These are called hridaya granthi, the knots of the heart. The knots of the heart in English translates to the knots in the mind. The most fundamental knot we have in our mind is based on self-ignorance, avidya. So avidya, the sixth city of the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, leads to, when you don't know yourself, what does it lead to? It leads to desire to fulfill yourself. You don't know yourself as fullness. You don't know yourself as purnam, as completeness. Then when you don't know yourself, you feel you need to do something to be complete, right? So desire arises in the mind to become complete. And where does, we have seen in Bhagavad Gita also this desire. Where does desire direct towards? Desire always directs towards external to feel complete. So ignorance, desire, and action, he says, are the three final cities of this jiva. So you can see here, he's talking about Shankaracharya has made this 17 constituents in the Tattvabodha. Here he's made these 19 constituents into 8 groups, and he's added 5 extra city of the subtle elements as well. So this is called the eightfold Puri. Puri is just another way of presenting the subtle body, but it is unique to Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ. It is very unique. You don't see it. So the sixth, we're not interested. We have seen the other Puris, up to fifth Puri we have seen. The sixth Puri, avidya. Avidya is the primal problem for all human beings. When there is self-ignorance, avidya, ignorance, there will always be projection. How does it work? When I don't know what I am, who I am, I will always take myself to be what I'm not, right? You can't help it. You don't know who you are. You will definitely project what you are not. And what you are not, unfortunately, is all the limitations of this physical body, of the body, mind, sense complex. All of that is taken to be what you are. And that is where the ignorance begins. So with avidya always comes adhyasa. We call it adhyasa in Sanskrit, which is projection. The mind will always project what you are not. You know, partly you exist because you know I am. I am, I am. We've seen that. That thought, from the time your mind starts thinking, even a child knows it exists, right? I am, I am, I am. But you don't know what you exist as. You don't know how you exist. This is the fundamental problem, ignorance. And when you don't know how you exist, what you exist as, you will always project what you are not. And this is where we have all our sufferings are based on this fundamental mistake all human beings make. Projection of what I am not is taken to be what I am. It's like taking the snake to be the rope. When I'm the rope, it's like if I'm the rope, I I see myself as a snake. Because I don't understand myself as rope. So when I look at myself, I only see snake, right? So this is called adhyasa, confusion, and it is not a deliberate thing we do. We do it without even our knowledge. It's not deliberate because we are ignorant. It happens because of ignorance. I jump at that snake I see in life. I don't do it just with myself. I do it with everything else in the world as well. We don't really see what there is in the world. We don't understand what there really is. We always project from our own background, from our own, issues we've had. We project a world onto the actual world that exists. And the suffering is because of that. That is Jiva Shrishti. So the sixth Puri that Adi Shankaracharya says, the sixth Puri is this avidya. And you can see avidya is the cause for the most of the problems in our life is because of ignorance. In fact, most, I say, but all can be traced back to ignorance. And most of the solutions given to address these problems are superficial. They will address the seventh puri, which is kamaha, and the eighth puri, which is karmaha. So if you look at many, places in spiritual traditions and everything, they will go for the superficial desires and activities. So desires, lessen your desires, get rid of desires, don't have desires. You read that in all the spiritual literature. And of course, activities, actions, do seva, do the action well, do it as offering to Ishvara. All of this, the focus will be in many of the traditions on desire and action. But what is it? Can you see, if we focus only on the superficial desire and action without addressing the root, desire and activities will always keep coming back in our life, right? So it is like putting a band-aid on the wound which is not healed. So you put a band-aid on the wound, you do practices. Many practices are there in many places. There's umpteen things that we can go for: pranayama, yoga, this, that, and they are all to address these two things: desires and our activities in life. But even if we're able to reduce the desires, even if we're able to divinize our activities, have we removed avidya, the root cause? As long as that root cause is there, the desire, the seed of desire will always remain. It will sprout, it can sprout one time or other. So the only way to address this problem in life, the fundamental problem of feeling inadequate, of feeling small, of feeling little, is to remove by the roots the ignorance that keeps you from knowing that you are actually fullness, that you're actually the meaning of satisfaction, and you don't need anything. You don't need to fulfill your desires to feel happy. So we understand now, Adi Shankaracharya beautifully has brought up three more cities of the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, avidya leading to all the projections. And then we saw in Bhagavad Gita, kama, that desire, later can turn into krodha. When it is obstructed, it can turn into anger. So this is called the triple knot of ignorance: avidya, kama, karma. So avidya, kama, karma, it comes up in a lot of Adi Shankara's commentaries, that this is the knot of ignorance. And as long as this knot is tied very tightly, I cannot own up to my true nature, my purnatvam. And I will keep continuing taking myself to be what I am not. So all the problems stem from the identification with the ego and the ignorance. In the next verse of this Vivekacūḍāmaṇiḥ, he continues talking about the sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, and he says, idam shariram shuno sūkṣmasannītam lingam tvapañcīkṛtasambhavam savasanam karma phalanubhavakam swajñāto swajñānato gnadirupadhiratmanaha. 97th verse. I'll just give you the brief meaning, then I'll unfold it. He says, listen carefully to this subtle body, what it is. It is produced by the 5 subtle elements, and here he brings up something else. We have heard the subtle elements are what produce the subtle body, but here he brings up this subtle body is possessed with, it contains the latent impressions of lives, past lives, vasanas, savasanam. This subtle body is where your vasanas are stored. And this subtle body, he says, karma phalanubhavakam, which means it is the subtle body alone that helps you to experience the fruits of your actions. We think it's the physical body, but actually we're not experiencing physically. It is the subtle body in which experiences take place. My experiences of results of past actions take place in the subtle body alone. That is why Vedānta, Veda, is more interested in the subtle rather than the gross. The gross body is just the place where you reside. In fact, you are the resident of the gross body, And that gross body, without you as resident, we know where it goes, right? Into trash. So in the beginning, so here he says that this subtle body does not have a beginning either. It is beginningless because it is brought about by ignorance of the self. It is superimposed on Atma. Even the subtle body actually does not really exist. As long as we identify with the I thought, and the I thought identifies with other thoughts, he's going to elaborate on this, which is very interesting. Then the subtle body is still in existence. And when we talk about moksha or liberation, and we read in many places liberation from the cycle of birth and death. When we describe moksha like that, what is that travels to another body? What is it that takes rebirth? It is not my physical body that's going to take rebirth and have the same physical body, right? So when the transmigration is because of the subtle body, it is the subtle body that goes to, everybody can hear, right? Yeah. It's a subtle body that goes on to the next physical body. So here he says it is a subtle body is superimposed on the Atma. It is also eventually discovered to be unreal, not yourself. So he says, idam sukshma shariram samnitam lingam. This sukshma shariram is called linga sharira. It's another word for sukshma sharira, and very beautiful. Sukshma, we know, means imperceptible, unseen, subtle. But what does linga mean? So we have linga, Shiva linga. We've seen many types of linga, but linga actually has a very beautiful meaning in Sanskrit. Lingyate anena iti lingam. It is that which indicates something else. It points to something else. And so this linga sharira, it is called linga sharira because the sukshma sharira is responsible for pointing out something else. Through the sukshma alone, you can understand Atma. So beauty of it, Adi Shankaracharya calling it linga means only through this linga shariram can you discover Atma. Because what is this linga shariram, subtle body? It is like we have seen a mirror. It is a reflecting medium. It's able to manifest consciousness. When you shine light onto a mirror and then you point the mirror elsewhere, light of the mirror, reflecting of the mirror, can actually light up other objects, right? So we call it reflected light. It is not original because the light is shining on the mirror, and then when the mirror is turned towards other objects, actually it reflects and it makes other objects shine. So this is called reflected consciousness. Pratibimba, we call it in Sanskrit. Better than reflection, because reflection, sometimes you think there's two things. Here, manifest sukshma sharira alone allows consciousness to manifest through it. Another very good example to understand sukshma sharira is the light bulb, the old style of light bulbs, not the new fancy ones. In those old light bulbs, what happened when the light bulb, when you switch the switch on, the current goes through the light bulb and there is a filament in the light bulb, right? The filament, if it is working properly, will create light at the bulb. The bulb itself is inert. The bulb doesn't have anything, it cannot light up itself. That bulb is like this, the stula shariram, the physical body. It is inert. The filament, can it do anything without current? The filament also cannot do anything unless you switch on the switch and current is sent through the light bulb. So this current is consciousness. You can take the current. The current is always going through all the bulbs. Some bulbs are 10 watts, some bulbs are 50 watts, some bulbs are 200 watts. Depending on the capacity of the bulb, the light is bigger, but the same current flows through all of them, right? So the sukshma sharira can vary according to karmas. So we saw satkarmajanyaṁ. Your sukshma sharira is also because of your earnings of your past karmas. So if you come with a certain sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, maybe some people's sūkṣmaśarīraṁ is 100 watts. Some people's sūkṣmaśarīraṁ only 5 watts. But current is 1, right? So the filament in the light bulb is like the sūkṣmaśarīra. When current is passed through it, it is able to light up that bulb. Just like the subtle body lights up, brings to life the physical body. And when the filament is gone, what happens? You hear the bulb going pop. Sometimes, in those days, now all new bulbs have come, but you used to hear that bulb going pop, a little pop you used to hear, and you used to shake that bulb, and it's not working. Even if the current is switched on, it doesn't light up the bulb. Why? Because the filament is gone. So same way, the sukshma sharira, it leaves, when the sukshma sharira departs the physical body, it is unable to manifest consciousness, which is like the current. It doesn't mean current is not still there, right? That is very good example to show consciousness is still there. Consciousness still it pervades the dead body, but there is no reflecting medium, manifesting medium to make consciousness shine through the physical body. So consciousness, sūkṣmaśarīraṁ, is inert as well, and it borrows consciousness and it spreads the consciousness to the senses. The senses shine and make the world shine after. So very beautifully, this, we call it levels of borrowing. So consciousness is borrowed first by the I thought. I thought lends consciousness to the other thoughts. Then the other thoughts lend consciousness to the senses. The senses go out. Then the body also becomes conscious because of borrowed consciousness. So here he says this linga shariram, like Shiva Lingam as well. When we worship the Shiva Lingam, the Shiva Linga is only a symbol to indicate Bhagavan. The Shiva Linga is a symbol to indicate Ishvara as the material and the intelligent cause for this universe. What form the linga, iconography of the linga is beautiful. People those days, the rishis thought, what form can we represent this Bhagavan by, where all names and forms are in one form, where all manifest, unmanifest, everything we put in one form. What is that one form when you put all forms? It is like making a ball, right? You take things together when if you have, I don't know, this example has come in my mind because, in North India, you see atta everywhere. So, these atta balls, sometimes the atta sticking here, there, everything. What do? You pick up the atta from all different places and you make it into one ball, right? So this Shivalinga, you pick up all the names and forms from everywhere, all different names and forms, and you compress it. What do you get? You get that linga. That Shivalinga actually represents the formless Lord, the formless form, and it's spherical because it has no beginning, no end, and that is why we worship the linga as Bhagwan, intelligence and material cause, because any form can be invoked in Shivalinga. Very beautiful example, very beautiful understanding of what Shivalinga is. Then he says in this verse, apañcīkṛta sambhavam. Apañcīkṛta, we have seen this also. It is born of subtle elements. This sukshma shariram, the stula shariram, physical body, is born of gross elements after undergoing pañcīkṛta, which is a process of grossification. Okay, so apañcīkṛta means they are not grossified yet. They are still in subtle form and they go to form the subtle body. Then the question will come, how long has my sukshma shariram been around, right? I know my stula has been around for some time now. You have a birth date for your stula shariram. Your stula shariram was born today. Tomorrow is Jesus's, apparently Jesus's stula birthday, right? Stula shariram birthday. But you may ask the question, when how long has my sukshma been around? When is the birthday of my sukshma? Do we have sukshma birthdays as well? I mean, even celebrating stula birthdays and stuff. Do we have sukshma birthdays? Do I know my sukshma birth date? No. Sukshma has no birth date. He says here, Anadi Atmanaha Upadi. It is beginningless. There is no beginning to the Sukshma Shariram. It is born of, he will go on to say, it is born of ignorance, actually. But it is a medium of manifestation for Atma. Atma manifests. So there is no date of birth for Sukshma Shariram. The mind itself, the Sukshma Shariram, which contains the I thoughts and your thinking faculty, is always continuous. It is continuing all the time. So you can't really ask, when did it start? When did I get this mind? Even at the end of days, we call it pralaya, mahapralaya, when all the bodies are brought together, they're made unmanifest. In many of the Puranas, we see that when Brahmaji inhales, he takes an in-breath. One inhalation of Brahmaji, the whole universe is dissolved. When he exhales, then next creation comes about. So when Brahmaji inhales, everything goes into unmanifest form. Then the question comes, will my Sukshma Shariram also get destroyed then? No. Unfortunately, it does not. It is there still. Mind goes back to causal form. It can never be destroyed except in knowledge. Knowledge is the only way to destroy Sukshma. So mind remains in potential form when it goes into dissolution. And what have I been carrying in this Sukshma Sharira of mine? We have seen this. He mentions this. In previous lives, I have done a lot of things repeatedly, right? Even my thinking, I may have done repeated patterns of thinking. Now, when I do things repeatedly in life, anything, even in this life, what happens when I do things repeatedly? It creates what in Sanskrit is called a vasana. Repeated thinking, repeated action creates something called vasana. This vasana is like a habit and it remains with you in your sukshma shariram. That's why it's very important, especially if we're bringing up children, to create the proper vasanas in them. As parents, we are also responsible for what we put into our children. If we make them do the same thing again and again, good action, think good thoughts, then that creates a vasana in the child. The child's mind is very malleable, it is fresh. It's good for the child to get these ideas from an early age, because when they get older, very difficult to create opposite habits, right? So this this is called vasana. It has been carried, not just, I don't create vasanas only from this life, I have created vasanas from purva janma also. So I carry in my sukshma sharira all my vasanas, and I have created extra vasanas in this life by doing certain actions, by thinking certain thoughts over again. That is why we say, be very careful about your thoughts. When there is some negative thought or some thought which is not conducive for your life, if you keep repeatedly entertaining that thought, you will definitely create a vasana that is stored in your sukshma shariram. It is not going to be helpful for you in future. In fact, it may be difficult to get rid of. We cannot get rid of, we can transmute, but Savasanam, he says in this text, Savasanam means the Sukshma Shariram is full of vasanas, recorded and registered experiences of your past, habitual thinking, acting, all of this creates vasanas. So there are many ingrained habits that we all have. Why do we have certain likes towards something? Why do we dislike other things? These are all because of vasanas. You can see when you are a child as well, it starts, children. Why do the children like certain things? Why don't they like other things? And my past pleasant or painful experiences have created this type of thinking. So what creates vasanas, actually, you have to see this repeated thinking is because of any emotion that I attach to experience in life. If I attach certain emotion, either joy or sorrow, to experiences in life, and I keep entertaining those emotions, then I create vasanas in my mind. So suppose I'm, like if I give an example of my reaction to a very unpleasant situation, right? There's an unpleasant situation that has manifested for me in my life. Now, how do I react to it? I react to it with, again, sadness, with sorrow. I react to it unpleasantly also. So, unpleasant outside, unpleasant inside. I'm reacting like this. Now, when I keep reacting to unpleasant situations and I there's a vasana created which says, oh, is going to happen to me again. The same thing will be repeated. I will, sometimes we think it is going to be exactly the same way that is going to turn up in future. Same thing's going to happen, and you lose all hope because you've already created the vasana in your mind, the vasana of dejection, the vasana of despondency. That is also a vasana, but through repeated mechanical thinking, you have made it into a vasana. So, knowing this, you can understand how not to create vasanas for future. You can create good vasanas. You don't need to create negative vasanas which will not help you in your spiritual pursuit. So, notice it is the emotion attached to experiences. And also, we're not only unpleasant vasanas, we create pleasant likes also. When I like something a lot, suppose I really like, sweets. I am so addicted to sweets. I have to keep eating sweets. So the thought arises, especially at Christmas now, a lot of sweets will be around. And I keep going towards sweet, 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 and I keep entertaining that thought. In my next Janma, I'll be born wanting sweets all the time because the vasana has been created already. I have entertained the vasana. I've attached an emotion to that experience. What is the emotion? Emotion of pleasure. So, emotion of pleasure or emotion of pain attached to experiences in life creates repeated habits. So, that's why Bhagwan says they're paripantino, they are your worst enemies in life. Don't create repeated habits which are not helpful for your spiritual life. Vasanas can also manifest in the same, in the way of, we see, child prodigies. Child prodigies, suddenly you see a 4-year-old. I saw a video once, somebody has sent me, 4-year-old child playing some Bach piece, concerto, something like that. His fingers were moving all over the piano keyboard. I couldn't imagine a 4-year-old. His feet can't even touch the pedals of the grand piano, right? They're dangling off the stool. But this little boy's fingers, every note he hits, he's able to play this beautiful piece at age 4. How is it possible? In this life, everybody will say, wow, he is a prodigy, he's amazing. Vedanta people will say, not so wow. He has obviously mastered that in his past life. He has brought that vasana here in this life. It is manifested due to his karma. And it is logical. Shastra makes a lot of sense logically. It is pramana for this. These are all unseen things. We can't scientifically verify vasanas, right? We can't cut up sūkṣmaśarīraṁ and do dissection of sūkṣmaśarīraṁ and see, oh, how many vasanas we have. So we understand that everything that my stula is able to do is accounted for by things I carry with me in my sukshma. That way, sukshma becomes important to address as a spiritual person. And where is the sukshma located? It is all over the body. We saw that the brain is the medium for the thoughts, the thought faculty. And the habits that we have developed is because of, we saw in the 3rd chapter, we can bring this in here. The prakriti, the nature that we have born with, is because of the habits I have cultivated from past. So one has to learn to manage these vasanas, to transmute these vasanas, and manage the past emotions which become so real even in present. See, if I'm hurt by somebody again and again and again, I have an experience of being hurt. That same hurt is going to be projected onto other relationships. In fact, we don't deal with the person as they are. If I have been hurt or I've had some kind of abuse in my life, that is why, as a child, you see that children who have been abused a lot, the vasana is there that they're going to get that in adult life as well. They come into relationships thinking I will be abused here. And everything is seen from the perspective of those feeling, and this is transferred to everything in the adult life as well. So vasanas can be very dangerous because it stops you from living a full and happy life if not understood. Then Adi Shankaracharya says, karma phala anubhavakam. We've seen this in Tattvabodha as well, but this sukshma sharira we saw in Tattvabodha is the means to experience karma phala. Here he says, this sukshma sharira is the anubhavikam, is the experiencer of the karma phala. And we'll see why he says experiencer. Because without sukshma sharira, can you undergo any experience? When is your sukshma asleep? Your sukshma is asleep when the stula is asleep. Both are sleeping together on the bed, right? So deep sleep we're talking about. Deep sleep, sukshma is in bed. In deep sleep, where is experience of pleasure and pain? Is there any experience you have? No. This, there's nothing to be triggered by any experience, no pleasure to be triggered by pleasant experience, no pain to be triggered by painful experience, because your antahkarana, your sukshma sharira is dormant. It is only the pranas of the sukshma that are active, right? See, pranas are responsible for keeping your physical body alive. Pranas involve respiration, inhalation, exhalation, all of this pranas are taking place without your volition. So when you go to sleep, do you have to worry about breathing? Do you have to worry about anything activity happening in your stula? No. What is taking care of your stula? Your pranas are taking care. How beautiful it's been designed. But the rest of your sukshma is asleep. Everything is asleep. So you don't have any experience of pleasure and pain. In fact, in deep sleep, most frightening things could be happening around you. Some people are like that. They can sleep through earthquakes. They can sleep through bomb attacks, anything. Some people are like that. I know that I'm not able to do that. I'm very light, I can get up. But some people, anything, you can explode a bomb near their ear and they won't wake up. That deep sleep they have. So, what is not waking up? Your sukshma is dormant, stula cannot move, anything could be happening around, but you're not responsive to the world. What does that show? The world is set up for my response to it. The world is a setup, actually, created by Bhagavan. Everyone's world is a setup, whatever experiences we have to go through. But where do I go through the experience? It is not the world. I experience through my sukshma sharira. That is what he's saying here. Your sukshma is responsible for going through the experience of sukha, happiness, pleasure. We'll call it pleasure, and pain. So it is in the sukshma that you experience pleasure and pain. And how is this pleasure and pain triggered in the sukshma sharira? By the Ishvara Shrishti world setup. World setup means Bhagavan has created this world for you to experience pleasure and pain alone. For you to exhaust your karma, Bhagavan has created this world. And what has he put in the world? He's put your mother-in-law in this world. He's put other people in this world. He's put objects in the world. He's put situations in this world. And he has created this setup for each and every individual. What for? So your sukshma can experience pleasure and pain and exhaust the karma. So very beautiful. You understand this, that the world is a schooling ground for you, actually. The world is a schooling ground, and every lesson you pass, you graduate to the next class. You go to the next class, you pass the test that Bhagavan has set up for you, he will graduate you to the next class. And what is the ultimate graduation of the Sukshma Sharira? Ultimate graduation of Sukshma is discovering yourself. That is the ultimate graduation of every Sukshma Sharira. And identifying with the Sukshma Sharira alone, I say things like, I am upset, I am disturbed. Identifying, we'll see that in the next verses, because they're very interesting. He goes on further to explain the Sukshma. What makes you upset, disturbed? Because there is something in the Sukshma. It is the ahankara that experiences all of this. The ahankara, individuality, that is a thought form. When you identify with that ahankara in the sukshma shariram, that is when you go through all the ups and downs of life with the ahankara. In fact, Atma, he says here, Swa-jnanataha means because of ignorance alone. The I takes the instrument of knowledge, which is Sukshma Sharira, to the object. You can witness the Sukshma. You can witness, meaning inside you can perceive the Sukshma. You know your thoughts. You know your prana. You know all the components of the Sukshma Sharira, because you know even the power of your senses. You know when your eyesight is weak. You know when your hearing is weak. You know the power behind your karmendriyāṇi. All the powers invested in the Sukshma Sharira, you know. If you are the knower of the powers, if you're the knower of the Sukshma, you cannot be the Sukshma. You are the subject, very subject that knows. You take the instrument, you take the object to be I. When I identifies with the object, it's like, Puja Swamiji used to give an example. You see a donkey sitting on the street. Do you say, I am the donkey? No. Donkey is the object of knowledge, right? It's very easy to see because object. Here, it's very intimate. It is very close. The Atma pervades the Sukshma. But if you have some space, you can see that you can recognize and see your Sukshma Shariram. But when the I identifies with the thoughts and undergoes all the experiences of pleasure and avoiding pain, then you are in samsara. Then that Sukshma gets into trouble, because you take yourself to be the thoughts, and you are not, in fact, the thoughts that are the Sukshma, that manifest through the Sukshma. So we'll see in the next class that Sukshma Sharira is only a means. Sukshma Sharira contains the Antahkarana, but in fact, Atma is untouched. Atma is untouched by the thoughts. Atma is untouched by anything happening in the Sukshma level and on the Stula level. And more, I become objective over myself as a human being, as a jiva, as an individual. More and more I develop objectivity. I see that this whole setup by Ishvara is because he wants me to exhaust the karmas in this janma. That is what, jiva has the karma. And ultimately to discover what? I have no karma whatsoever. The karmas belong to this upadhi. The karmas belong to the body, mind, sense complex that I am resident of. The karmas cannot touch me. So that has to be recognized when the I is seen separate from the sukshma and the stula. So with that, I will leave it for this week. We will see more about the sukshma have got, and he talks very beautifully about the thoughts, the I thought, and its identification with the body mind sense complex, and that I thought is what we take to be the reality of the self. And in fact, the I is an imposter. It is an imposter self. And I put so much reality and so much truth to that I, and I suffer with that in life. So we'll see, how to avoid suffering all of this in the next session when we meet. Hari Om. Any questions, you can always write to me. I will answer in the next session. And we will uh, discover the third Sharira as well. We will carry on and find out about Karana Sharira, which is the causal body, the cause for these Stula and the Sukshma. Hari Om. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaः, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Asato Ma Satgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om. See you all next week. Hari Om.